development. So I think Lori wanted to have the floor to start off.
I do. Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I appreciate it. So we do have two, I think, critical development agenda items for this evening's discussion. But first, I wanted to share some news with Council. As you know, we lost Dr. Goss when she accepted a position with the Ohio State University as Director of Real Estate, and we have been ardently searching for a new economic development director since that time. And I'm very pleased to announce the hiring of Nathan Strum as our Director of Economic Development. If you're not familiar with Nate, he has been the Executive Director at Grow-Licking County for the past 5 years and has many years before that, he actually came from Pittsburgh in the development world. So we not have quite yet bonded over the Steelers yet, but we might get there. But he is familiar with Pittsburghese. So, but he has been doing a phenomenal job over in Licking County with the businesses that he's attracted, the number of jobs that he has attracted. He's president of the Mid-Ohio Development Exchange. He's well connected in the Columbus region in the development industry. And I cannot be more excited to welcome him to our team. He's actually dialed in on the call tonight. If you would like to say hi to him, you can. I told him just to be prepared in case you had anything you wanted to say to him or ask him a question or not. But he really wanted to dial in so he can listen into the conversations given the agenda items that we have on tonight. So he will not be starting until later in May as he transitions out of his current position. And I did tell him he could take a day or two off in between. So he was geared up and energetic and ready to go to work for Gahanna. But again, very excited to welcome him to our team. And I know that you will love working with him as much as I already think I'm going to love working with him. So just want to thank and welcome Nate to our team.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So the first item we have up is ordinance 022.
Mayor, do you want me to take that?
Yes, Jen, I was just going to say, Jen, if you can handle that, please.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. The first action item for your consideration this evening is at Eastgate, and this is Robert Levesque, no stranger to development in Gahanna, has done some pretty nice buildings. This is 6579 Taylor Road. Mr. Levesque is also on the line with us this evening if you should have any questions of him. We're looking at about 193,000 square feet of flex office and warehouse. The developer is currently aiming to build these on spec, but I can tell you that not a week goes by that we don't talk to interested parties looking for existing buildings or buildings that are coming online soon. Our assumption is this will not be speculative for much longer, again, because we continue to get interest. And as we do come across interested parties, we forward them on to Mr. Levesque. They are requesting 100% at 10 years. For the CRA, Community Reinvestment Area, this is tax abatement relief for the real estate property tax improvement. And the city will share, as part of the compensation agreement, 50% of its income tax generated from this development, which is scheduled to create about 65 new full-time positions at an associated payroll of about $3.6 million. If we can bring this out of committee tonight, Mr. Levesque is ready to get started on this, and I believe he is already talking with planning. And we've actually talked with him at length about additional buildings on that site and how we can maximize the site, because as you know, there's not a whole lot of developable land left in Gahanna. Flex office with warehouse is a very popular item. We are talking to a lot of developers, and if you can visualize a small office space, showroom with a little bit of manufacturing and then warehousing in the back, what it actually becomes is almost a one-stop shop for these manufacturers who can have their sales office, their accounting, back office operations, but then also be able to transport in and out from that same location. This is a multi-tenant facility, and so we have great expectations for this property because this is a very popular prototype. And with that, I'll entertain any questions. And if Mr. Levesque is on the line, Robert, if you'd like to say a few words, I'm sure council would love to hear from you. Councilwoman Bowers.
Sure, Jennifer. This is Robert. I just dialed in. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, guys, we're obviously very excited to continue our progress there on Taylor Road. We've had great success there at Eastgate and are almost completely full. Just have a few small units left, and we're certainly happy to be creating additional jobs there on Taylor, and look forward to building this next phase with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque. Councilwoman Bowers.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Six, last year we talked a little bit about kind of a framework or a road plan to have sort of expectations set for properties that were going to be or would receive abatements. Things such as green or sustainable or LEED certified infrastructure, building or something to that effect. Can you give us any insight as to these types of innovative or perhaps more sustainable or green initiatives or other things that maybe will come along with this development?
Sure, absolutely. Well, one of the things that the city instituted last year was the Property Assessed Clean Energy Initiative. And what that does, it does allow for some more energy efficient measures to be installed into new buildings, but also to renovate existing structures. As it relates to, I know we also talked about, walkability, connectivity, pedestrian friendly. That area right now, we have some connectivity with the actual streetscape itself, but I would say other than Property Assessed Clean Energy, that's probably where we're at right now. There are certainly some things that we could institute as part of the agreement that would request. We've seen everything from public art to sharing in a multi-purpose trail. Once we have a better handle on probably how that whole development is going to work out, because we're actually looking at some traffic control measures out there as well. So I think you'll probably see a little bit more formality on that this year.
I
see where this lot is. That it's almost to the intersection that exists out there. Do you know roughly how far in, or is it a corner lot?
Mr. Levesque, do you want to answer that question, or do you want me to take it?
I see roughly where it is. I'm just kind of getting a little tighter perspective.
Oh, sure. I've got it, Jennifer. Thank you. No, there's still 5 acres that's on that hard corner of Eastgate Parkway and Taylor Road.
Okay.
That is currently the farm. So this
it's just west then of the corner.
Correct. It is. It is west, and it sits right between that farm's 5 acres and then the Jefferson Water drive entrance. So our drive entrance would be, approximately. It actually sits more towards the west, and closer to the Jefferson Water entrance. And then also actually we would have a secondary entrance for truck traffic that would enter and exit onto Eastgate Parkway.
Question is the 5 acres that's just to the east, is that the one that the city has that is left to the city?
No, that's further down on Taylor.
Which way?
I'm trying to get my bearings straight. It's away from Eastgate.
Further west.
Further east, I believe.
It's further south.
No, Taylor's running east and west.
It's west, further south, further west.
It's further west?
There's a lot that the city owns. It's further south.
This is not one the city loaned. It's one that was left with Mrs. Junkerman's will.
Yeah,
but
Nathan was referring to the Increment property.
I thought you were left over from Columbia Gas. I'm sorry.
No.
So
Yes.
it has license state.
Okay.
For the well, that's another topic, but it looks on the map like there's a road on the north side that goes, will your driveway like line that driveway?
I'm sorry, what was the question there about the drive?
On the north side of the road, there on one of the parcels, there's a driveway that goes back. Your road, access road line up with that driveway or road? I can't tell what much.
It would be a driveway on the north side, and I'm not exactly sure where that's located in conjunction with our drive.
Mr. Levesque,
But I know it would be a driveway. Yes.
I've got the satellite view up. I see the corner lot that is just west of Eastgate Parkway. And that lot does or does not include the buildings that are there.
No, the parcel that I have there does not include that 5-acre corner lot with the buildings.
Okay, so we're going just back a little bit further west. Is this the strip that has large amount of frontage but isn't very deep, and behind it is heading towards the Jefferson Water?
Correct.
Okay. And then roughly,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, just trying to follow up from Nancy's question. Roughly where on the parcel is the expected entry and ingress and egress? Doesn't have to be exact, just towards the ends or towards the middle.
It would be left of center, west of the midpoint.
Got it.
Yeah, as far
Nancy,
as matching up, right.
there might be the possibility of lining up with Seam Enterprises. There's a large entry there, maybe. Depends on what their plan is.
But again, it looks like it's right in, right out.
Right.
So, I mean, as far as matching up with that,
yeah,
you don't want to offset intersection, but still, that's a right in, right out. So anyway.
Well, no, I just mean in other places we've had it's nice if they line up in case something sometime later has to be done. It's nice if they line up to start with. So if that can be achieved. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Lost mine. Okay. So, all right. So then we're ready to have first reading. Do we need this to come back to the committee? Just on consent agenda then?
I'd rather it be on regular.
Okay. All right. So this will be first reading in 2 weeks, and then no need to come back, and then on the regular agenda. Okay. Thank you. Next one. Ordinance 0025. The development agreement.
Yes, so this agenda item concerns a project that we have been discussing for quite a long period of time, specifically the Crescent at Central Park. To remind everyone how we arrived here tonight. We began discussions on this project in earnest. It was October 5th of last year when the rezoning request came before council to rezone a portion of the 100+ acre property for a residential component, and there was also a request for parkland. Those requests were discussed in multiple council meetings from October 5th all the way through February 15th when council approved that rezoning request. And during those meetings, we had very in-depth discussions around the financial incentives that would be tied to this project. I know at the time we were talking about rezoning, but council very much felt that they needed to understand what the financial impacts of this project would be. And we, again, had very detailed discussions around the incentives that would be asked, what the impact would be to the city, what the impact would be to the schools. On March 22nd, at the committee of the whole meeting last month, we presented a draft of the proposed agreement, really to provide an opportunity just to have one more discussion around that development agreement, to provide an opportunity for questions and input before we brought forward a finalized agreement for your approval. So actually tonight we are coming to you with a finalized agreement along with a request for legislation authorizing me to enter into the development agreement with the developers as well as the property owners here. The financial terms that are part of this agreement are the same exact terms that had been discussed for the last 6 months with regard to the TIF, the NCA, and the CRA that are included in it. It is a very straightforward agreement. The only new items that have developed and now been incorporated into the agreement concern the use of the property and were added in response to council concerns that have been raised. Specifically, there is a provision in there that the developer offered to include in there, which limits 4 acres of the property to office and medical use only for the next 7 years. There's a provision in there also inserted by the developer that would prohibit or restrict any multifamily development on this property for the next 40 years. And then there's also a provision that discusses the timing of the transfer of the dedication of the 34 acres that sits south of Tech Center Drive, which would be dedicated to the city for parkland. And under the agreement, that parkland would be dedicated, I believe it's within 30 days after the TIF legislation is approved and becomes effective, and after the first certificate of appropriateness is issued, which Michael could talk a little bit further about what that is if you need to hear that. So again, it's a very straightforward agreement, no impact to the school district, but I am going to ask Jennifer Six just to, again, recap what the financial incentive terms are on this agreement. Jen?
Great, thank you very much. The first item is a community reinvestment area. This is 80% for 10 years. No further action is needed from the city for this, but this is just to let you know that that's what this is. The city will share 50% of its portion of income tax as spelled out in the school compensation agreement. The next one is the tax increment financing. This is a 30-year non-school TIF, and non-school meaning the school is not affected. The school is not losing revenue as a result of this TIF. This TIF will cover the cost of the infrastructure requirements needed to actually work on to develop the project. The income taxes generated from this, gosh, we're looking at about $30 million during the 30 years in income. Well, I'm sorry, 1.38 is coming from the TIF that'll be taken into account for the real property improvements that'll happen to the infrastructure. That's the TIF piece. One of the items that is in the development agreement that we don't often talk about is the NCA charge, but also hotel bed taxes that the city will be receiving as a result of this. The NCA charge is a new community authority. This is optional. The developer has agreed to put this in place. We did not ask for this, but it is of great benefit and could roughly generate about $2.5 million for the project. We are also in the development agreement. We have some additional financial terms outlined for you, and we have the memo put together. I'm sure as everybody has read it. We received one question, which I believe we did answer, and we're here tonight to answer any questions that you have. We do have Aaron Underhill and Larry Kanini on the line with us as well, and we have Emmett Kelly and Yaz Yarashwi from Frost Brown Todd, also representing the city as it relates to TIF. What you will see next, if this is brought out of committee tonight, which we respectfully request your approval to do so, the next step will be to actually put together the TIF legislation as well as the new community authority legislation that'll come back before you.
I would also add, and I neglected to, that we are respectfully requesting a waiver for this development agreement for 2 reasons. Number one, as I've already noted, we've had substantial discussions over the last 5 months with regard to the financial incentives around this project. Number two, and I believe we share this at the March 22nd committee, the whole meeting as well, is the construction window is now opening, and there's a limited period of time here. And while we do not believe there to be any vertical construction that would occur in 2021. There's a lot of infrastructure work that would need to get started to allow the vertical construction to happen next year. So in order to be able to take advantage of construction prices, lock those in, et cetera, again, respectfully asking for a waiver. So we'd waive second reading. We'd still have the 30-day wait period for it to become effective, but at least the developer then would know that they could move forward and begin to take the next steps.
Oh, Mayor, may
Yes.
I add one additional item? As I noted during the previous ordinance that we were discussing, we have been receiving calls for development, but also we've been pretty aggressive in making those calls to other developers in the area. And I will tell you that once this passed for the rezoning, the uptick in interest in Gahanna, specifically around this property, has escalated. And we are actually talking with, we are under NDA, but we are talking with a developer who's interested in additional area in Gahanna around the airport for office, for headquarters office, and manufacturing. And so there are a lot of people watching this project as it relates to how it's going to turn out, and the additional growth that will result from this is very exciting. This is a good time to be where we are in Gahanna. And as you'll see, apartments are popping up all over the place, out and around Central Ohio, outside of Gahanna. And really now is the time to make this project work. So thank you.
Okay, so anyone have questions?
I will if no one else does.
Go ahead, Brian.
In section 6, I'm going to refer to the NCA language within this agreement. As this agreement is written, if this would be passed, there's a hard cap of 5 mils as a maximum, and which as a beginning, it may be a reasonable value. I don't necessarily expect that a maximum would end up being used, but it would make sense to me, and I would expect that this maximum would be at a higher level. Obviously, the actual millage is typically set by the new community authority. Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. And that would for the actual millage, but this would be set as the absolute maximum that could ever be set, depending on circumstances, but depending on issues within the environment, depending on opportunities, there may be a logical reason to set it at a higher rate. And I would expect that the max set at something higher, something along the lines of 9 mil. The other item is that according to this agreement, there would be a hard stop with no extensions at 10 years for residential and 30 years for all remaining property. I would expect at a minimum there would be renewals, if not simply eliminating the hard stops. And obviously these are not, when we talk about renewals or extensions, those are all dependent on what is happening at that time in the community, and any ending or non-renewals, et cetera, would be made with the observations made at that point in time and by the membership of the NCA.
Thank you for those comments. I think that we can certainly address those, Mayor, Mr. Underhill, when we bring forward the NCA. We'll certainly take all those into consideration.
We can, but as this document is written, those are hard caps, and I would be concerned with this going through legislatively with those numbers in it. Obviously, with the continued negotiations from the NCA being a separate discussion.
Well, I can address at least, and Larry's here as well, and he can weigh in. You know, as we've stated previously, the community authority charge it really is truly a voluntary thing under Ohio law, and especially here because we haven't been asking for any of that money to help us reimburse our infrastructure costs. And so we felt like, given where Gahanna is in terms of its total millage, you know, once the abatement burns off, adding another 5 mils would keep this site competitive. And, you know, you always run the risk of when abatements wear off and you have office projects, they go looking for the next thing. And so we are leery of going above the 5 mils. We put a lot of thought into that, and 9 mils has been used in other places, but that's relatively high, and especially on a property like this, it concerns me a little bit that we may be getting a shorter term gain, but in the end that might be a problem. And so Larry, you can weigh in if you'd like, but that'll be a tough pill for us to swallow, I think.
I'll have a follow-up. Go ahead, Larry, if you've got any comment.
No, I would have to agree, and keeping in mind that the CRA that exists is also not 100% 10 years. It is 80% 10 years. So there is still going to be some property taxes that will be levied on all the projects there. So in essence, we felt that, as Aaron said, when we looked at the market and looked at competitively what we would be dealing with, we thought 5 mils would be a reasonable amount. And the fact is, Aaron said, we are not looking for any of those dollars. We just felt that it would be a positive item in the city's toolbox as they move into negotiations with the schools, as well as any other needs that they may have for the community.
Thanks, Larry.
I'm not saying that I would have an issue beyond the period of the 10 and the 30 years, the 10 on the residential and the 30 commercial, but as it goes for us to be competitive in these early stages, to do the things that council wants us to do and bring, I think we need to be reasonable in where we set that benchmark.
So thanks, Larry. The couple of comments. What I'm referring to is the contract minimum allowable. That's to just provide a concept for everyone. That's the equivalent of, say, a rack rate at a hotel. The maximum rate that's allowed to be charged. You'll see it posted on the door of a hotel when you stay in it. And it's typically a significantly larger amount than any rate that you pay. But it's the maximum that they could in certain circumstances. Or a suggested retail price on an item. Jewelry would be an example. But you'll never pay that price typically wherever you go. These are the maximum available legislated amounts, and Larry, I would agree that in all likelihood, essentially, I would expect that in all likelihood, the actual amount, especially at the beginning, because we want this project to be successful, that it would be different and likely significantly lower. The question is, what is the legal, legislated, contracted maximum? And that's where I'm suggesting that it should be higher in the 9 mil range.
Michael, do you have
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a clarifying question up front, and I'm assuming this is probably most appropriately directed towards Ms. Six. And I just want to clarify here that is this document the appropriate place to discuss the various terms to the tax increment financing reimbursement that is being requested by the developer?
It is.
Okay. All right. Is there anything in here that discusses the various, a certain item that I've referenced in prior meetings leading up to this point that conditions that reimbursement upon the development of certain types of uses, particularly office and hotel?
We have taken a long, hard look at that request, and we have talked with counsel, our legal counsel with it. We feel that this project is in line, and we have, other than the restriction of the 7 years for the 4 acres, have taken no additional recommendation to this council for any additional clawback or restriction.
Okay. There's plenty of official record, plenty of minutes. Anybody wants to know where I stand on this, so I'm not going to belabor this anymore. We've got emails that saying that this would be explored. The fact that it's not in here feels a little bit like a bait and switch or a hoodwink. And my position is if there's not a clawback provision, I will not support this going forward. I'll just leave it at that. If you guys want my support, you know what it requires.
And I understand that, Councilman. I know we've had several conversations, not only you and I, but also with Frost Brown Todd and you. I understand if you're disappointed that we did not incorporate the provision that you had asked. We did spend substantial hours discussing and evaluating this. We had multiple conference calls with our outside counsel to look at legal opportunities to address the concerns that you had. We went back and forth with the developer. And ultimately where we came out was that this agreement is very straightforward, given the project that it is. We felt that There are other ways to address concerns, such as zoning changes, for example, to limit uses of the property, et cetera, that could very well address the concerns that you have. And ultimately, after, again, having multiple conversations with outside counsel about what different options we had that were available, felt that the agreement that we had in place was the best one to bring forward to council. I don't know that we hit anything. No, I don't know that we hit anything from council. So to hear a bait and switch is a little off-putting for me, to be quite frank. I think that we've been very upfront with what we were presenting, and we were willing. It did take a great deal of effort to try to look at other options to consider it, and ultimately just came back to where we started.
And I'll just
So
say
for
that,
anyone that might be tuning in right now, I just want to set the record straight and I believe the record supports what I'm about to say. For anyone that is tuning in right this minute and is not understanding the full context of these discussions, what was the preceding might make sense. But there are emails, there have been conversations about if we would just pass this, that there would be a point in the future where we could discuss it and take a look at it. I don't know how else. When the end product does not include those items that were well discussed in prior meetings, and yet they are absent in this agreement now. I don't know that there's any other way to sit here and look at this and feel like the applicants got what they wanted and council's requests, at least mine anyway, I'll speak for myself. My asks, which I was led to believe would be given a fair shake and would be fully explored and frankly would be incorporated in it. They weren't.
I would respectfully disagree. There is a provision that was added. The restrictions to limit the use of 4 acres of the property to medical and office use only for a period of 7 years, and to add a provision restricting any additional multifamily for a 40-year period were added. And I think the difference is that you wanted some additional measures beyond that what would happen beyond 7 years, and it was explored. It was in good faith explored at length with our city attorney, with our outside counsel, with a development consultant. We just didn't arrive at in the same spirit and decision that you wanted to have. I don't know that there was ever any agreement that it would be included. We said we would look into it. We added the 4 acres. That was what the developer offered to do, and we felt that is appropriate to address the concerns that were raised.
So I'll just add one more thing here. The concern that I have is that all the developer has to do is just ride out the clock. And then essentially it's fair game to put in other various low value uses. Warehouse, could be a strip mall, could be restaurants. I'm not saying these things don't have some value to the community, but as far as bringing in income taxes, it's pretty low. And that's the issue that I have is that as we started going way back months, this is one of the last virgin land tracts of virgin land in the city that should be developed for commercial purposes. The 2 highest value uses that I can think of are office, which we're looking at payroll and payroll taxes, or hotel, where we get the bed tax.
Well, if he,
and so I'm just sitting, I'm sitting here looking at this, feeling again very much like the developer is getting what they wanted. They said what was needed to be said in order to advance this, and here we are with an agreement that's being presented that I think lacks the teeth that is necessary to ensure that the project, the plan that they themselves have proposed for months, will come to fruition. That's a difficult pill to swallow.
Well, I think if he were to sit on the property for 7 years, there would be no benefit to him, because then there's no money going into the TIF to reimburse him for the $1.4 million in infrastructure that he's got to put out in to get this project going in the first place. So it's to his benefit to actually develop that property as quickly as he can in order to get his upfront investment into the property back to him. You know, there's never 100% guarantee into the future as to what's going to happen 10, 20 years from now. Markets change. If you look at what the market was 2 years ago, you know, the demands in the market, flex warehouse space was not a high commodity 2 years ago. It is today, given everybody switched to looking to online shopping and the way businesses are now operating. Office space 2 years ago was at a premium. Office space isn't so much as a premium anymore, given COVID, and people are still trying to figure out what the work from home adjustment is going to look like. So, you know, I think a 7-year commitment from the developer, I felt, as did my development team, was a reasonable offering from the developer to address the concerns that were raised.
So here's, I guess, where we differ. And Madam Chair, if I may just make one more clarifying point here. The issue that I have is I don't want to subsidize the lower value stuff. And that is effectively what a reimbursement from the TIF funds for the public infrastructure improvements is. It's a subsidy. Just call a spade a spade. I don't want to subsidize a development that puts in a road so that it can be developed for low value uses. If they wanted to do it on their own dime, this conversation's over. But what they're asking for is 7-figure sum from public monies in order to partially offset the cost of those public infrastructure improvements. And the way I see it, unless the community, the city, is receiving something of high value, I don't know that we should be paying those monies. And so what I'm asking is, if you don't do what you said you were going to do, if you don't do the presentation, or if you don't carry forward the plan as presented, which does include those high value uses, then just give us the money back. It's as simple as that. And so, I mean, at this point, everybody knows where I stand. If there's not a clawback provision in this development agreement, then I won't be supporting it. If you want my support, you know what it's going to take.
Okay, Mr. Underhill.
Yes, thank you. Well, Mr. Schnetzer, I'm disappointed as well to think that we've been accused of pulling a bait and switch. I'll say this: I think we've gone a long way and a lot further than I have ever gone on the private restriction side. I mean, we thought that was a big give on our part. I will say this also, that if this property were ripe to be some big retail center, it would have been there by now. I mean, I don't think Larry or his owner would be building some street that is, you know, all glitzed up, which is really not what's happening here, but it is going to make some of this land more attractive for office type and medical office type uses. But you'd probably just put in some sort of a private drive to service some retail strip centers. And frankly, that hasn't happened to date. And I think what this is an investment in the infrastructure in the area to make this a little more attractive for those types of uses that you want. And we believe we're going to get there. If our intent was to go and bring a bunch of retail uses here, that would have been done by now. And Larry, I don't think that's your intent at all.
Aaron, I'm going to wait for remaining comments because I see some other hands up before I make a statement.
Marissa's name.
Marissa?
Yes, thank you. As a question, just to clarify, so the deed restriction on multifamily, it will impact anyone who owns the property from subsequent development, correct?
That's correct. It will be a deed restriction in the chain of title,
Okay.
enforceable by the city.
And one of the big questions or concerns, I think, that existed, at least for me in my mind, around multifamily is the issue of the way Gahanna's income tax is structured, with 100% credit for income taxes that are paid outside of Gahanna. So when we have residential development without the creation of jobs, that potentially creates a tax or a revenue deficit to the city. If those workers are all working outside of Gahanna. The concern for me is that we certainly expressed our concerns that this tract of land would be developed to not generate revenue for the city. And I think Mr. Schnetzer has made that point very well over and over again. My concern is that the concept for this project, as had been discussed on the land use plan, and I think as had been discussed, wasn't to prohibit any residential use but to prioritize use that would generate revenue. So I don't see how a 40-year deed restriction is tied to our income tax structure, or how it really addresses kind of the root issue, at least from what I saw it to be.
Well, my understanding was you all didn't really like multifamily, and you're no different than most communities. You know, everybody wants the jobs, but no residents to work there. So, you know, it's we were trying to make sure. I think there was some comment early on. It might have been Mr. Schnetzer that, well, is this the gateway to asking us for more? And so we were in good faith, showing that we weren't going to be asking for more for 40 years.
So I think that that's an oversimplified kind of concept of the concerns that were expressed. And I do appreciate that there was and is an effort, and I certainly appreciate the deed restriction. I guess my concern is that I don't remember discussing 40 years, and my concern is that that is a long time away from now, and I'm not sure that that's in the spirit of addressing the problem. And that's what I'm getting at.
So if I can ask, so what would you like to see in the agreement then? Are you saying you don't want a restriction on multifamily on the property?
Oh, no, Mayor, not at all. What I'm saying is that we would like to make sure that there is the whole point of, I think, the discussion was to ensure that the rest of the project developed the way it had been proposed and conceptualized.
Right.
And so I think that overall, we just want to have, I'll speak for myself. Overall, I want to make sure that there is, that there are these tools that align our interests. And I think that was a phrase that Mr. Schnetzer used. I don't think that a deed restriction on a future owner 40 years from now necessarily aligns our interests. But I appreciate kind of where we, like, I do think that makes sense. I'm just trying to get at the why behind it. It's not necessarily anti-multifamily. I mean, it's certainly been communicated to us that multifamily and that there's a housing shortage in the area, et cetera. So I think that we need to be cognizant and cautious of kind of how we do things for future generations.
Ms. Bowers, if I can be clear, I just want to make sure that you understand that the deed restriction would be effective immediately and for 40 years, correct?
I understand yes, I do understand that. Thank you, Mr. Underhill.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions to understand, not debate. The two key items here is a 4-acre block for 7 years within the west of the watershed section of land. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the 40-acre and the 40-year restriction, deed restriction is on all of the land as well, west of the watershed?
That's correct.
Are they stacking on top of each other? There's something I'm not understanding. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, they are stacking on top of each other as it relates to the 4 acres.
Okay. Just from my understanding, and again, not debating the value one way or the other, just trying to understand what the meanings of what I'm seeing are. What is the value of the 4-acre restriction if there is a 40-year restriction on residential? What's that one doing?
Well, for a period of 7 years on the 4 acres, we are only going to be able to market that property and develop it for office uses and no others. On that same 4 acres during that 7-year period, we could not develop any multifamily residential, nor could we do that for the entire 40-year period on the balance of the property to the west of the watershed.
So what is it you can do on the remaining property that you can't do on the 4 acres in that 7-year period?
We have rights to come back for a hotel, some retail. You could do any sort of office you want there still. Nothing prevents you from doing that, and we would hope that would happen. We're under, I think it's the SCPD is the zoning category, so it allows a wide variety of office, retail, restaurant, and service-related uses.
Okay, thank you. I may have a debatable discussion point. I'm not sure what that is quite yet, so I'll let other folks talk for the moment.
Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. Mayor, the only question I have right now is earlier, and I apologize, I missed it. I got distracted with some residents talking about some technical issues. You mentioned that you're asking, or you and your administration are asking for a waiver on this. And can you explain again, what is that for? Because for something like this complexity, I'm really apprehensive about that.
Sure. Well, I first of all, I felt that given the discussion we've had really for the last 5 to 6 months on this is not the first conversation we've had. This is not the first time we've seen this agreement. And we've really had detailed, in-depth discussions about this agreement for a period of time. That was the first reason. So I felt that there was a level of comfort in then asking for the second reason, which is given the construction season, it is April 12th right now. If this were to go to first reading next week with a waiver of second reading, it would be voted upon on April 19th. If there is no waiver, then the next time this comes before council to get voted on is in May. And by that time, the developer has already lost a substantial period of time with regard to construction. And again, not expecting there to be any vertical construction happening this year, but there would be a lot of what I would call laying the groundwork, so to speak, of type of work that would need to happen on this property to set the stage for vertical construction in 2022. So again, when a construction window opens, there's a limited period of time that you can jump through that window. Not only to secure your cost and your estimates and your vendors, but to then move forward with those things. Permitting, there's floodplain that's involved in this. There needs to be some permitting work that needs to be done, all of which is going to require a substantial investment on the part of the developer. But they clearly don't want to start to head down that path until there is a commitment and an assurance that this agreement will move forward and they can go ahead and start investing those dollars into developing that land for this project. Does that address?
Yeah, I mean, you've helped me, and thank you. And I apologize again for you having to repeat yourself.
It's fine.
But I still think I'm really shaky on the whole request for a waiver. So, but thank you.
Jamie, did you have a question? I saw your hand up, but it's gone now.
No, I'm good.
Okay. I had just one question. I guess a comment. As far as the NCA, we didn't ask for that, and that was just something that the developers and owners voluntarily suggested that and offered to do. So I don't have a problem with them setting the parameters that they want on that, because they're the ones that they're the ones that volunteered to do that and additionally tax themselves and any subsequent owners. And that's my comment on that. The second one is, where are sidewalks on it? In this, it talks about the road that's going to be built and street trees, but are sidewalks included in that? It didn't specifically say, or does that come in like further down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sidewalks will be involved. I think we've intended for calling it a new street to be, I guess, inclusive of everything that would typically go along with a public street. Curb and gutter, sidewalks, street trees, signage.
Well, it says all those things but sidewalks. That's why I wanted to ask him. Sure.
We can certainly get that added. That's not a problem. That was the intent. And
okay, all right.
obviously, when we go through the details of the Planning Commission on all of this, we'll be showing that, and I'm sure they'll want that as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, who's Brian?
So let me provide a little bit of clarity with the NCA, and by no means am I the expert in the room. Aaron is certainly far more knowledgeable than I am. The NCA at its highest level is a legislated, a contracted organization that is allowed by ORC, that is made up of an equal membership of the developer and members of the community with one member of the city. So the developer does have membership and decision ability and guidance of the NCA. This is not a handout to the city. This is a decisioned organization that then has a resource of funds available for the benefit of the NCA. That very well may also include items that are of benefit beyond the physical space that are also of benefit to the community. That's why they exist. It's for the overall benefit of both the developer, because they are a member of the NCA, and the community as a whole as a member of the NCA. I'm not saying that in my request to change the number from a max of 5 to a max of 9, I'm not suggesting to establish or that the NCA would establish a starting value of 9. What I am saying is that at some point in the future, it may make logical sense and to have those values within the developer's agreement and not be whatever the contract is that is built into the NCA. We're putting artificial caps in things that haven't been determined yet and isn't the right place to start. And again, my point is that the number that is being suggested there as the max is the equivalent of the max rate allowed in a hotel room door that is typically even double what anyone would ordinarily pay when they call a hotel to get a room, unless it's some extreme special event. And then thank you, Larry, and I think Aaron also mentioned just in simple terms that putting some form of an extension or taking off the sunsets is viable. This is not, I guess just to recap, this is not a pure, this in no way is just a handout to the city. This is value to the developer. This is value to the land mass that makes up the NCA, as well as it is a value to the community. The meat is within the final legislated NCA as it gets written and gets approved by council. To artificially handcuff that within the developer's agreement is what I have a concern with.
Mr. Lyric, I appreciate that, and certainly the concept doesn't bother me, and I understand where you're going with it. I think here again, from a marketability standpoint, when the 9 mills is permitted, that's what anybody who's looking at the property is going to go ahead and assume will be charged. Most oftentimes when there's a charge like that available, that is what happens. And from the developer standpoint, we will have seats at the table, and that's all to be negotiated as well. And frankly, you know, in exchange for the 5 mills rather than 9, we don't care about having any seats at the table. It's here again, this is your money, not ours. We're gonna be paying it. But you know, my only concern would be that, you know, we're left to the whim of that board that we won't control, even if we do take our 3 out of 7 seats or whatever it would be. So that would be my only problem, is here again inhibiting the marketability of the site compared to others.
Ms. Bowers.
Yeah, thank you. I think just to clarify my earlier comments regarding the deed restrictions, my concern, I think, again, is maybe similar to Mr. Lyric's in that we are creating a very long-term restriction or prohibition that I guess, for me, my concerns are related to something that is legislative and could potentially be changed based on the actions of council or the actions of our community. And by creating deed restrictions that I'm not aware could be, I'm not a property, I'm not a real estate attorney, so I'm not sure how those deed restrictions could be altered, but maybe Mr. Ashrawi could share with us how deed restrictions could be terminated. My concern is just that we're creating a very long-term impact on restricting land use that could change based on the needs of the community.
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Bowers. They can be, the deed restrictions can be terminated just like they're created. So a termination of a deed restriction that's executed by the benefiting entity is all that it takes. Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't have the deed in front of me, but because the city is the beneficiary of that deed restriction, the city can in fact unilaterally terminate that through a written instrument that's executed and recorded with the county recorder's office.
Yeah, that's correct, and it would require council's action because you took the action in the first place to accept and approve it.
Correct.
So that's a separate piece of legislation that we would expect. The deed restriction itself is going to be a separate piece of legislation.
Well, go ahead. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, I think the deed restriction and the restrictions are written into the development agreement, with the deed restriction being an exhibit there too. So I assume when Mr. Underhill referred to the legislative process, it was this process here that incorporated that restriction. And so in a similar vein, when removing that restriction, because this city speaks through its legislative body, it would just take an official act of council to essentially authorize the mayor to execute that termination of the deed restriction.
I agree with that, yes.
Does that answer your question, Councilwoman Bowers?
Yes, thank you. I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
You're on mute, Nancy. You're still on mute. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. So any other questions?
Well, I think as opposed to questions per se, I think what we're looking for is what is our path forward? Whether it's come back to committee, whether it's adjustments we made per request, whether it's whatever those steps are. I think that's what we need to get to. Aaron, just and correct my math, my ballpark. The gap that we're talking about, if my math is roughly correct, these are not hard set numbers, but the 5 mils to 9 mils on $1 million evaluation, assessed that becomes about 30%. That's about a 4 mil difference. We're talking $1,200 per million.
Well, you're a better mathematician than I am. I need to catch up with you. Hold on a second.
Something worth $1 million, a third of that times 4 mil.
Say $1,400 is what I come up with. So yeah, ballpark.
I would hope no one's going broke and no one's gold lined streets with those numbers.
Larry, do you want to add anything?
Yes, if everyone's done with comments, statements from council.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I didn't see your hand.
No, I thought I had my hand up.
You do have it up. It's just that I can't see it from my screen.
Thanks. We have been debating this for some significant time, and these discussions even were a part of the rezoning request. And this has gone on for going on 5 months now. And I really don't sense that there's a true support from council. I think there's some confusion regarding the TIF and what a TIF really is and where the funds really come from. Jennifer had made a request at the last committee meeting that everyone respond with comments and concerns by the following Monday. And I believe, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Mr. Schnetzer was the only one who obliged that and provided his thoughts and comments. And I don't think we received any other thoughts or comments. So I'm a little dismayed. I'm a little angry that this continues and continues to be debated. And I'm going to ask Aaron to formally withdraw the request tonight, because I do not see us making any progress on this, knowing that I am losing multiple opportunities right now because I can't provide a definitive date of when I can have sites ready. And honestly, I cannot continue to give as I have with these conditions that have been asked of me. And every time I acquiesce, it never fails that there's one more thing we want. I want everybody to remember that Buckles Court North, where we currently have the ability to serve clients, we ask for no money for that infrastructure. We ask for no TIF. And we even voluntarily removed the SCPD zoning from it and made it all office. Because we looked at the global picture of this project and looked at how we could be competitive. And we worked with staff to determine what are the things we need to do to make the Crescent competitive. Not this 5 acres, not that 10 acres, not that 20 acres. The project as a whole, how to make it competitive. And every time your development team, our team came up with great ideas and had brought uses, as we bring another use, and Jennifer and I are working on 2 big uses right now. I can't continue to put myself through this and put my clients through this. I've put my neck on the line by making the decision to give these conditions to you on these deed restrictions without even consulting them, because they've given me the freedom to do what I do best. And it's unfortunate that this council won't give me that same ability to do a job. So at this point, I'm asking Aaron to withdraw it. We were going to move forward with this project without any help from the city, because we have enough talent on our own to do it ourselves. We don't need your assistance. We don't want your money, and I'm done with it.
Karen?
Yes, I have my hand up because the fact that we would not move forward on this project that is meant to be there, that's been going on for 4 years. I just find it to be something that has made my stomach turn tonight. We have worked hard. Larry has worked hard on this 4 years ago, I think, Larry. Didn't we go and see what the potential was here? And I think it was at least 4 years ago.
Yes,
and now it's time, I believe, that we need to be moving forward. And I am willing to, I didn't raise my hand because I had no questions on this. If we can't trust Larry, and we can't trust Aaron, and we can't trust the rest of the people, and Jennifer and the mayor, then we're never going to have anybody to do anything on that property. At one point, they were going to put a fish place, wasn't it? What was the name of it? Tell me on, Nancy. Yeah.
Bass Pro Shop.
Yeah, and that didn't come through. I had to tell people, everybody's moving ahead of us, guys. Let's go. Let's do it. You think it's going to fall apart? Well, if that's going to fall apart after everything that's been said over all these months, then nothing's going to be able to be put there. So I'm telling you right now, I'm ready to vote. I wanted to to move forward on this, and sure, we had our questions. But the questions were, send us the questions. We'll answer them for you. I don't know if for Mr. Larrick, if it's possible to say that at a certain point on the community, that if the five could be talked about to raise it to more than that. But if that could be like just we're at 5, that's the best we can do. If I understood that was the best we could do, and we didn't ask for that money. That's the best we can do. But you could say that at a certain point, you could have more discussion as to whether it should be raised or lowered, period. That's I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. I don't particularly care. I've done many of these, and quite honestly, most of them have turned out pretty darn good. So let's let Mr. Canini and Mr. Underwood and everybody get to be able to go and start getting ready for what's going to be something that's going to, I think, is going to be very good for our community.
Stephen.
Thank you. I guess a couple of comments now. I just really want to say that, Mr. Canini, I hope that maybe you said that some of those things in anger, and I can understand anger and frustration. I, for the record, have not heard really anybody wanting to kill this project tonight. I've made a big speech last time when it was before council, and I'm still pro for this project. But I just hear questions from my colleagues, and that's all I really hear. Mr. Snetzer, I don't mean to put you on the spotlight, but I just want clarification so that I understand really what your question is. Are you saying that you need restrictions past the 7 years on those 4 acres of land? Am I interpreting that? And maybe I've made it, too dumbed down from what you're saying, but I just want clarification on what you're really asking.
Sure, Mr. Renner, thank you. And I think there's a lot of frustration here. I'll just say that. It's been a long time coming to kind of get to this point. And
Yes.
I mean, like Mr. Canini, I'm feeling, like I don't want to discuss it any more than I have to. I think everybody knows where I'm coming from, but I'll elaborate here and address Mr. Renner's question. So I think there are various concerns out there, and I appreciate Mrs. Bauer's comment about a prior statement that I made about aligning the interests of the developer and the city. In that spirit, or in that vein, I think, in my opinion, a superior approach to ensuring that the highest and best use goes in this area is not so much to write in restrictions and prohibit certain things, but rather to restrict or save incentives or subsidies for those higher and better uses. And the big issue all along with this global development was the piecemeal nature of how it was going to unfold. And the fact that, a significant portion of the developable land that was down there was being asked to be rezoned as residential. And the implicit sort of leap of faith that was required of council in order to hope that would be the first domino that would lead to other things. This isn't meant to be, this isn't meant to cast aspersion on the developer, the applicant, their legal representatives, or anything like that. It is just the acknowledgement that I think economic forces change. The uncertainty that we were dealing with 5 and 6 months ago and the uncertainty that we're still dealing with now. We do not know what the future will hold. But what we do know is that certain types of development has greater value for the community than others. And so how do we ensure to the best that we can that those higher value uses come to fruition, such as those that have been included in the proposal? I would say that what we should probably do is incentivize/subsidize those uses and not incentivize/subsidize other uses, such as residential, such as warehouse, such as gas stations, and those types of things that maybe while they have their place in the community, I don't think they rise to the level of warranting a subsidy or an incentive. Things that generate unrestricted revenue, such as income taxes that accrue to the general fund, such as bed taxes and so forth, those might, in my personal opinion, warrant some form of incentive. And so when I talk about the reimbursement and being willing to give it for some things and not being willing to give it for other things, that's ultimately what I'm driving at here. And it all goes back to the most concise way that I can portray that sentiment or that feeling is we're aligning the interests of the developer with those of the community. And so, Stephen, I know that was a little long-winded, but I hope that that sheds a little bit of light on where I'm trying to come from here. Again, I apologize for being short earlier. It's just that I know that we've talked about this a number of times, and it's been a long week, at work, a long weekend, all these other things, and I felt like everybody here perhaps hadn't had the required context in order to know where I was coming from.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schnitzer. I definitely appreciate that. And again, I apologize for putting you on the spot on that. I think that helps clarify things. And I don't know with Mr. Canini wanting to, I hope he actually changes his mind on pulling this out. But I think the full intent from both the presentation and from the data that we've been given before is that it is supposed to be the high value development. And even in the long term, I know you might want to see it more in writing. And I don't know if that's actually even possible, but I highly respect your position on it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Jamie, do you have a question, comment?
I keep raising and lowering my hand. I like Larry, I'm so frustrated with this. We postponed the hearings for this because we merely met the legal requirements for posting the thing. And then we beat the crap out of it to get to a 7-0 and a 6.
6-1.
It was 6-1.
Embarrassed, I'm frustrated. And it's just, as Karen alluded to, 15 years ago, this thing was supposed to be a Bass Pro Shop that never came to fruition. It's a piece of land that's been sitting here forever. We've got somebody that wants to develop it. He does not want to develop it with low-end stuff. He's not going to put in millions of dollars worth of infrastructure to put in a Kmart. It's ridiculous that we have beat this project up for 6 months now. And for somebody to ask for a guarantee on what the future holds for office space, given the current environment out there, my company just built a brand new, fitted out a brand new office space, and I haven't been in it yet because we moved in January and got sent home in March. So as Lori, the mayor, alluded to, office space ain't what it used to be anymore. To guarantee that we're never going to need residential, we have 9 houses for sale in Gahanna right now in the entire school district, I believe. The last I heard was 9 houses for sale in our entire school district. We need residential. This developer backed off the residential component at our request, which is something that is desperately needed in this town and would serve the uses that are proposed. And Mr. Schnitzer, you've been out front on this thing, so I don't mean to pick on you, but bed tax ain't what it's all cracked up to be. They're minimum wage jobs, and bed tax is a relatively small component of a hotel. The hotel isn't what does it. It's the convention space that goes with it, the retail, the restaurant, everything else that supports it. And we talk about butts in the seat. I do this for a living. Trust me. We need customers to go into these things. You build a restaurant out of the middle of nowhere with nobody to go to it. The reason Creekside struggles is because we don't have anybody down at Creekside living there going to the thing. This is just ridiculous that we're beating this thing up for 6 months now, and I'm embarrassed and frustrated. And Larry, I feel for you, and I that's why I've raised my hand 3 and 4 times. Guys, I love you, but this is just I can't do this. This is ridiculous. Larry and the team, we've got our legal counsel, we've got Larry's legal counsel, we've got our economic development folks, all telling us that this is the way to go. We've got zoning passing these things 7-0. And we over and over and over on every single land development project that this town has, somebody has a problem with it, whether it's in their backyard or it's not the right number of trees or the dog park isn't big enough or whatever the hell it is. I'm telling, this is ridiculous. Can we please let the experts do their job and get something built in this town? With that, I'm going to put my hand down again because I can't anymore.
Marissa.
Yes, thank you. I think just to synthesize a little bit about where we are, I hear 3 asks. Outside, I'm going to leave Mr. Schnetzer's ask kind of on its own and maybe come back to that. I've heard kind of 3 specific points. One being increasing the maximum potential millage on the CRA. NCA, thank you, sorry, on the NCA. My ask being that we have some clarity perhaps, or even just something to the effect of in paragraph 9 of Exhibit C that clarifies that the deed restriction can be amended by a subsequent legislative act. It's fairly general, and I'm just worried about future confusion as to who has the right to terminate that deed restriction. So if there could be maybe some clarity there, I think that might help solve my concerns. And then Mr. Renner has raised his concerns regarding waiver, and I'll tell you I share those concerns as well. So those are, and I'm seeing some other heads shaking. So I think that those are some 3 bullet points. It certainly doesn't tank a deal or tell you all to like pack your bags, because I don't think that's what I'm hearing. I think I'm hearing some fine tuning. And I'm going to come back a little bit to Mr. Schnetzer's point. So I'd like to maybe have a little bit of a dialogue with Mr. Ashrawi and maybe Ms. Six on this. It's something that Mr. Schnetzer and I feel honored that I've been able to have some of these conversations, and I certainly share concerns about subsidizing with tax dollars for-profit development. So one of the concerns that I have is around potentially why is it legally feasible to claw back, and who would we claw it back from? And maybe if we can have that conversation with Mr. Ashrawi, that there might be some dialogue productive dialogue.
Happy to do it, and I know my partner Emmett Kelly's here, and brought Emmett in because he's kind of the expert on some of the economic development tools, and I know he's spoken with some folks, but we're certainly happy to have those conversations.
Again, everybody, I don't want to continue to waste the resources of the taxpayers, because you don't work for free. Staff doesn't work for free. And this continues to go on. And I don't see an end to it. There will continue to be asked, just as Marissa has asked for adjustments, Mr. Larrick's adjustments. I appreciate all those things. But where was that 5, 6, 8 weeks ago when we were presenting this? It has been sitting on Jennifer and Mayor's desks for months. I'm withdrawing it. Again, the NCA was voluntary. It was for you. I'm withdrawing it. The TIF, I don't want it. I need to move on. I'm losing and missing deadlines here. They're going to cost me millions of dollars. I need those millions of dollars to build the infrastructure myself. So please, Aaron, withdraw this. I'm done. I'm going to move on to developing, which is what I do best. I don't do politics very well, and you can all see that. So thank you all, and good night.
So Ms. McGregor, I've been directed by my client, so need to follow through, and would like to withdraw the request for the development agreement in the legislation.
Well, I I'm really sorry to hear that, because I think this is, I don't have any problems with, my only question was about the sidewalks. And so as long as that was, I mean, I don't have a problem with the waiver. It's construction season. We give waiver. Lots of other businesses, because we know we do things as emergency with waiver because of the construction deadlines. I don't understand the problem with the waiver.
Nancy, we just gave a waiver to our own parks department because they didn't know what the numbers was for park equipment. That's a direct expenditure of our own money we gave a waiver for. I mean, we do it all the time. So this is ridiculous. And we delayed this project for 3 months because the legal notice that we had posted wasn't sufficient for a couple people.
Mayor, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I have a comment, but I can wait until if there's other comments to be made.
I guess from our perspective, look, Larry's asked me to do this, but we have to sit here and try to count to 4. I'm counting to 3 on each side. I think there's someone in the middle. All we need to do is move this out of committee, but it's not a final action tonight. But unless Larry tells me otherwise, I have to respect his request and withdraw this.
I would ask Larry to reconsider and at least give us a chance to to vote.
I don't even know if Larry's still on. Is he still on?
Oh, he hung up, I think.
Well, if no one else has comments, I think I'll take a turn. And it's unfortunate Mr. Canini hung up, because I wanted to thank him for the work that he's done over the last 6 months on this, and to respectfully ask him to reconsider the decision and not to pull the development agreement on this. And I know we'll probably be on the call Aaron shortly after this council meeting is over to see if we can change his mind on that. However, all of that being said, I have to say I share his frustration. This is a project that has been going on for certainly 6 months under this administration, and it has been from the time this was presented October 5th. Every time there was a concern raised, the developer addressed the concern and did what he could to resolve the concerns of council. From the time of asking for a rezoning on the residential component, we don't like that many houses. Okay, fine, we'll reduce it. Well, now we're not sure we want it reduced more. Everything that was asked, this developer stepped up and did. This development agreement is about as straightforward of as an agreement as you can get. It's a CRA that affixes to the property. It's an automatic. It's a non-school TIF that makes the schools whole and has no impact to the schools. It's a new community authority that the developer didn't need, what was presenting as part of the agreement to generate extra income for the city that we could then turn around and use for infrastructure, whether it's developing the southern portion of Tech Center Drive or for some other purpose. It didn't benefit him. It benefited us, and to generate income for us. I don't understand why development is so difficult for this city. I keep trying to assemble a phenomenal development team. Thank God Jennifer Six has stuck with us for 15 months now and has been moving the needle on development, bringing projects here, working with our existing businesses to expand their businesses, trying to attract new jobs and new businesses here. Every day we come to work with the goal of trying to do that, because when we can attract jobs and businesses here, we generate income tax. Our goals are the same here. Understand that. The administration's goals are just the same as yours, to make the best use of our property, to generate as much income tax as we can, so that we can then turn around and reinvest it into the community for the benefit of our residents and of our business community. But it cannot be this hard. For development, everything that is most important for a developer is certainty. Certainty as to timeframes, certainty as to what they can expect. And when we bring things forward, and it takes 6 months just on a rezoning issue, and I understand the reason we did that is because we vetted all of these financial discussions as part of that rezoning. 3 weeks ago, we brought a draft of this agreement to council. The ask at that time was, we're bringing this to you, to present it to you, to give you a chance to look at it, ask questions, provide feedback, so that when we come to you 3 weeks later tonight, we can have a final agreement that has resolved your problems and your concerns and your issues as best as we could. And now for the first time, I'm hearing issues about millage and new community authorities and deed restrictions for 40 years. Where were you for the last 3 weeks? That's what we presented it 3 weeks ago for. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm as frustrated as Mr. Canini. And like him, I said, I don't do politics well either. You know, the development community is watching this project. When was the last time we had a project of any significance of this magnitude in the city of Gahanna? It was 15 years ago with Creekside. 15 years ago. That was about the time we were talking about a Bass Pro Shop going in on this same parcel of property. And I've been told by people who are at the highest level of the development industry in the Columbus region that if we can't make this project go forward, we might as well just roll up the carpets because we're done. Because everybody around us understands the transformative nature of this project and what it will do for Gahanna. This isn't just an apartment complex, with all due respects to apartment complex. This is a catalytic, transformative project that is every component that every community around the Outer Belt is building right now. Whitehall, Reynoldsburg, Hilliard, Westerville, Dublin, they're all bringing these types of projects forward. Whitehall's doing a $250 million project right now. New Albany's doing a $100 million project right up the road. Upper Arlington just passed a $70 million project like this that passed like that in Upper Arlington, who notoriously is against development. I guess I'm a little emotional about this right now because I need to understand from all of you, what will it take when you have a project of this quality with a quality developer who is invested in Gahanna, and we can't move the needle forward on this to make this happen in a timely manner? I don't know what else to do. I don't know what to do when I come to work tomorrow to try to bring another business or another project forward, or to ask my development team. I've already texted the new development director and said, please don't resign. I hope he hasn't after watching this tonight. We've got to do better for this. We just have to. This agreement, I heard a lot about we have to align the interests of the developer and the city. With all due respect, I believe this agreement did that. There were concerns raised. We went back with the developer. We negotiated. We compromised. The city gave up some stuff. The developer gave up some things. But we reached what we thought was a mutually beneficial compromise that would indeed align the interest of the city and the interest of the developer so that we could bring this forward to you and move this project forward. So I'm gonna call Mr. Canini after this and ask him to please reconsider his decision, but understand if he pulls the development agreement and goes forward with the project on his own, at the very least, I hope that's what he's willing to do. But understand, if he does that, there are no deed restrictions. He can put whatever he wants on the property, and the way that property is zoned, it can be everything from a used car lot to a massage parlor, because that's what the zoning allows for it. So him offering to incorporate deed restrictions of 4 acres or more was a way that we can control the best use of that property for the next 7 years. If he doesn't submit a development agreement to us, we have no control over that. We can build whatever he wants to. He can put the Kmart on there. Not that I think he would do that, but right now we've relinquished all control and any benefit that we had. That's the point of a development agreement. And we've got to get over this stigma that they're somehow bad things. They're not. So I'm going to respectfully ask this council to reconsider what you want to do on this. I hope that you will put it on for first reading next week, and that we could go back and get Mr. Canini to change his mind so that it can indeed show up at first reading next week. Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I'm in favor of moving it forward. I don't know if Mr. Kennedy will allow us. I mean, so far he said no, but I'm in favor of putting it on for first reading. Any other on a first reading with waiver?
I don't think we can put it on without his permission. So Aaron, Mr. Underhill, if you would, please let us know how to proceed as soon as possible.
Could we have no, look, if Larry's not pretty confident, that this is going to move forward, I'm not even going to embarrass myself by asking the question. So I don't know, I don't know quite how to call them and tell them I think we're going to turn it around, because I don't know if we are, and we certainly don't want to be turned down. So I'm open to suggestions. I can give him a call right now. I'm sure he's into his first bourbon.
Well, I just for the record, I mean, this is committee, so we could definitely discuss whatever, and I concur. I'd like to see it moving forward. I didn't see anything that was holding it back. But yeah, sure, we could put it on first reading if Larry wants to, go forward with that.
Wants to be able to count to at least 4 is what. And I have to say, when we did the Creekside development, we were about this thick, and that it was what it was. And I tried to ask questions, and all they did was shoot it down. They said that's the negotiated agreement. There was no question. I mean, it is so different in this process, and I realized that was a totally different thing. And willing to go back, and they've made changes, and he our concerns, and this is so different from then. I mean, we were just presented with take it or leave it. That's it. And it was a 4-3 vote for Creekside. This has been so different in that they have really addressed all the concerns. And if they're not having authority at 5, then I mean, I say take it out of the agreement if it's going to be a sticking point. It was nice that you offered to do it. I mean, we didn't ask for it. You didn't have to do it. It was your suggestion. So I don't understand the concern that it's not enough when we didn't even ask for it. So maybe I don't understand it all. So, but I am frustrated too, and I'm sorry. Marissa.
Well, I'll just tell you that none of you should be divorce attorneys because none of you would be able to manage this. My clients are, I think maybe Mr. Canini maybe rivals my clients tonight, but I think that there's been some great discussion tonight. We've had great discussion over the course of the last few months, and there has been a lot of responsiveness from Mr. Underhill and the development team. And that has been reflected in a lot of our meetings. There's been a lot of attaboys. And so I would hope that Mr. Canini kind of, is able to kind of recall the positives that have been reflected through this process. I just want to kind of go back. I'm reviewing the email that was sent to us on March 22nd. Some of the question that I'm bringing up regarding deed restrictions were not part of that. They hadn't been drafted yet. Unfortunately, the first time that I think I saw those items was in this most recent version. So I appreciate Mr. Ashrawi being on the line tonight to answer those questions for me. I think that there are just some, from my perspective, they seem like very minor details that have been brought up, and I understand that this process has been long in the making. But there's also been a lot of transition. There's been COVID, a new council, a new mayor, a new administrative staff. So I appreciate everyone's patience and continuing to work through with us. And I do remind everyone of the 6-1 vote on the rezoning. So I'm not quite sure why we're quite all in this position right now.
Ms. Bowers, I appreciate that. And boy, I really wouldn't want to do what you do for a living. This is bad enough. So I think we can easily address the questions that you raised tonight regarding the restrictions and your requested change to that. I think it was section 9 of the restriction. That to me is a no-brainer and not a problem at all. Mr. Alaric and I have had informal discussions way back when, even before I had anything pending with you guys about how community authorities work. I would be more than happy to talk to you, Mr. Alaric, again in a phone call or however to talk through what you're getting at. I think I understand it. I just want to, we'd have to get some more details on exactly what you're getting at. I think those are two things that we can either address or have more discussions on. I've texted with Larry. he says he's willing to move forward with your commitment that we can have an up or down the next time on this. And we really can't stress enough the timing of this. And I know the waiver is a little out of the ordinary, but for all the reasons discussed tonight, we feel like we've had a lot of discussion in the public realm. And so if you're able to move it forward with the ability to waive that reading, I think we can keep this going. You know, we are frustrated, but we all want to see this project be the best it can be.
Can you help me understand a little bit more about the waiver and the timing, especially since there's not going to be any vertical development, as the mayor's pointed out? What type of construction, or I understand there's probably going to be some land clearing and some utility work, but isn't this all very weather dependent anyways? And I understand the desire. I think our concern again is that yes, it's been in the public eye. Yes, there's been public discussion, but we're still changing the path of legislation. And I think that to me makes me uncomfortable.
Aaron, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, for the exact same reason we just gave Parks a waiver to buy playground equipment.
We gave them a waiver to buy playground equipment that was for last year's model because they could get it for a low price.
No, we gave them a waiver because they had to buy it and they didn't have a budget and it was time constraint and it's construction season. Asphalt plants have just opened. All the good contractors have contracts currently. All the good underground guys have contracts currently. I'm putting in 60-hour weeks right now doing land development projects all over the place because we want projects hitting the street right now so that we can get the good contractors. And if you don't, you get the guys that don't win the bids and you get higher prices and you get everything else. And then you run into, if you don't get it in, by the way, asphalt plants around here close. I don't know why anybody doesn't remember this, but they close every year around the same time. And if you get to a certain point and your project isn't done, all of a sudden it's force accounts and everything else, and it just jacks up the price of the stuff. So you've got to get under, and this stuff isn't even designed yet. We've got to get design, we've got to get approval through engineering, and then we've got to get construction. That is the reason for doing. It is construction season. They need to turn this loose, otherwise they're going to lose a year.
Thank you, Mr. Leesburg. I couldn't have said it better myself. That is, you try to get to a goal and you work backwards and see all the activity you need in the meantime, such as we need to get back to planning commission. We need.
Oh, you got it. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you, Mr. Leesburg.
And I
couldn't be a divorce attorney, but I can be a civil engineer.
That's a good thing. That's why we do different things.
It's just 2 weeks. They're not asking for emergency. They're just asking for the waiver of second. So we have 2 more weeks of time to get permits to apply for. Have to be done before they can even put a shovel in. There's lots of things that have to be done, and trying to get that done. I mean, even the last couple of years, if you tried to get concrete work done, I mean, it was hard to find. So, these are the kind of things they're trying to get done ahead of time. So, all right. Then we will move this regular agenda for next Monday. Okay.
Pending confirmation from Mr. Canini that he wishes it to move forward.
Correct.
That's fine, and I think that would protect me a little bit, but I think I'll get them there.
Okay. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all, and it's been a lively discussion. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. All right, I've lost my agenda. Next item from the Department of Public Safety.
Chief?
You're on
Are you
mute.
online? Oh, there you go.
I think I'm mute. Are you on mute?
Are you muted, Chief? Oh, no.
We can't hear him.
What have you been doing this whole time? Chief, do you want to sign out and come back in?
Well, it's for the school resource officer. Is this a standard contract we've done before?
I believe that it is. I believe it's the same as last year's contract, from what I remember him telling me. And Director Wynn, you're on the line. Do you have any other insights to offer until Chief Spence comes on the line?
The only changes would be the increase in officer costs
Right.
associated with it.
Right.
Is this for two officers? Or
Hello,
one
can you
for
hear
one?
me?
Yes, there we go.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
Chief.
Not
Much
sure
better.
what happened there.
No, that's okay. So just to catch you up to speed, Councilwoman McGregor asked if this was the same standard contract, and Director Wynn was just responding. It was, the only changes were with regard to the increased officer cost. Take it from there.
That's correct. We had a little bit of a change 3 contracts ago, or I would say two contracts ago, where the school district increased their coverage or their pickup of the first officer from 50% to 75%. They're still picking up the cost of 50% of the second officer, and then we have 3 SROs in the SRO contingent. We also have a supervisor, a sergeant that they report to, and the city picks up the total cost of the third officer, which is deployed to the middle schools and the elementary schools in the district, as well as our 4 private schools. The contract increase is a little less than 4% over the previous school year, with a total for the 21-22 school year of $203,693 billed to the school district.
Any questions or comments?
No, I haven't.
I think this is a great program, and I'm really glad that we are continuing this. I hear all the time that it's how valuable it is. And we seem to have great officers that have a good rapport with the students too. Any other questions? And okay, this is just, we don't need waiver, just first reading. Do we need to come back to committee? I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so first reading, no need to come back, and then consent agenda. Is that okay with everyone for consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next, I lost my agenda. Hang on. I think the last item from the Office of the Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much. So this item before you tonight is a proposed shared services agreement between the City of Gahanna and the City of New Albany. It is the culmination of nearly 2 years of discussion and negotiation between the administrations for both municipalities. It started back in 2019. New Albany actually approached the City of Gahanna and then Mayor Tom Neeland to have discussions around opportunities for collaboration with regard to the Mayor's Court services. Despite a pandemic and all of the other issues we faced last year, those discussions continued throughout 2020 under my administration with our team. And again, had to do with a great deal of research and evaluation of how our court is operating, how their court would operate, and ultimately involved alignment and integration between multiple departments, including not only the court staff, but also police, HR, and finance. Under the terms of this agreement, the City of New Albany would contract with the City of Gahanna to provide administrative operations for Mayor's Court. So the City of New Albany would, all of their tickets and all of those things get handled by the City of New Albany. They actually have their own magistrate, they'd have their own prosecutor. However, their Mayor's Court would be held in our building, and our staff would be responsible for all of the administrative functions around that. So it's the initial term of the contract. Well, it's a 3-year contract. It would be a little bit more than 3 years because it would go into effect July 1. We have timed this so that it would start at because of reporting requirements with the Ohio Supreme Court. It would have to start at the beginning of a quarter. So we are timing this to go into effect July 1st, which would be the start of the third quarter. So the proposed agreement would run through December 31st of 2024. So it's a little bit more than 3 years, just given when this would start. But I know I also have on the line our Director of Court Services, Amanda Parker, who can speak to you a little bit more about the logistical operations of what this would look like for our Gahanna staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, logistically, it wouldn't have much impact on City Hall. And what we're looking at doing is we have our court on Thursday. We have a morning and an afternoon session. Because of COVID, we have already adjusted that schedule a little bit. So our afternoon session starts earlier than it has in the past. I think even when COVID is no longer an issue, we're going to keep it as that schedule, and that will allow us to have a late afternoon session of New Albany Court. So it would continue to be on the same day. It would just be extended hours. At this time, we don't anticipate any need for additional staffing. I think we'll be able to incorporate their caseload into our workload with the staff that we currently have. If something should change in the future, that any caseload gets much larger, whether that be ours or theirs, I think that financially the contract says that New Albany will be responsible for their portion of that increase in reimbursement to us.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. And what I would say is, if there's anything that I've heard over the last 15 months, 16 months in meetings with Morpsey, One Columbus, municipalities all throughout the Columbus region really have been encouraged to pursue opportunities for shared services. This really would be a cutting edge agreement. We are not aware of any other central Ohio cities that have an agreement like this in place. It really is a win-win for both the city of New Albany and the city of Gahanna. It allows both municipalities to streamline our operations, and it allows us to reduce our operating costs for our own mayor's court. We're not adding staff, we're simply absorbing some extra duties, and we will be compensated for that. So all in all, we are able to, again, continue our court operations and reduce our costs, but also streamlining operations, again, with the city of New Albany. So it's a great collaboration between the two municipalities, and I think will make our little northeast corner of the Columbus region that much more vibrant and vital. And we really look forward to being trendsetters with other municipalities in our partnership with New Albany and strengthening that relationship with the neighboring jurisdiction. So I would also note that we are trying to align this with the city of New Albany and bringing this forward. Whereas we need to do an ordinance for this, they will be bringing it to their council via a resolution. So in order to align our timings with that, we are asking for this to be passed with an emergency so we still have first and second reading, but it would go into effect right away, which then would allow both municipalities the ability to begin to take the necessary steps to implement this by a July 1 start date. So there's software, bank accounts that need to be set up, et cetera. So we really need to have the authority to be able to move forward in the coming months prior to July 1 as quickly as possible to be aligned to put this into place by July 1. If we don't do this by July 1, we have to wait until what, October 1, Amanda? The next quarter?
Yes.
Right. So with that, any questions for either Amanda or myself?
I have a question.
Sure.
What is the yearly or monthly or whatever things that New Albany have that
the caseload?
Yeah.
Last year's Supreme Court report showed them around 1,100 cases for the year. In comparison to that, we do just around 4,000. So it would be a little bit of a bump for us, but they don't do nearly the caseload that we have.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jamie has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Jamie.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, quick question. I know when we had talked about combining dispatcher services with multiple municipalities, those kind of things, we also, the benefit of that was sharing staff or having coverage, those kind of things. You know, again, if somebody, you know, we've only got 2 folks and somebody's got to step away, somebody else could pick up a phone while somebody's on a call, those kind of things. Just wondering, obviously they've got their own magistrate, we've got our own magistrate, but again, is there some availability for overlap? Obviously, if our magistrate wants to take a vacation, could we use theirs, that kind of thing? I'm just asking. I know we're under contract with those folks. I don't know if there's some availability for that kind of sharing resources and people also.
I believe that would be the case as well. I know they also have our magistrate under contract. Okay. I do believe there's somebody else, but he would be, you know, again, if they were to use our magistrate, they would be compensating him, and vice versa for us too.
No, it's just nice to have that extra body again if something happens, things change. I know for the dispatchers, it was a great advantage because, like I said, that's a high pressure. Folks get burned out. There's a lot of turnover, that kind of stuff, and to be able to give somebody else some support. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I have no difficulty with emergency on this one. So difficulty with having emergency for the reason stated.
It's all
okay.
fine.
So this.
Good, Nancy.
Okay, so this will be on for first reading next, and as I think no need committee, and then we will be on for second reading agenda for the next time. Okay, so it'll be on the consent agenda for the following meeting. Okay, if that is it, that's the end of our agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
So much for a fast Nancy.